All right, well, let's talk about what I was just talking to that girl about that came up to me. The one from 7-Eleven that had picked me up and then during that street fair video I made. Because it's a conversation I wanted to talk about, and I'm just chilling here on this fucking bench. I think I actually might have gotten COVID for the 4th time because I can't fucking smell again, and I've been walking around with just fucking tissues over and over. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about, oh boy, how should we start this? I guess, about the sex culture in Japan, that kind of stuff, right? So, I've said before, when I first had seen like documentaries about Japan and I saw, stuff like loveless marriages, so to speak, or actually you could say that it's actually it's a very loving marriage, so to speak, but the partners allow their partner to go to places like Shinjuku to get out their sexual desires. And how many times, if you've actually looked up Japanese stuff, I saw a video just recently where someone was like, do you think prostitution is cheating? And there's all these people, no, prostitution isn't cheating. As long as you come back home and you're a family, it's okay. You know what I mean? But we all have desires, and once you get the desire out, as long as we're in this together, the family, it's okay. And that is something that I have seen firsthand many times in Japan. And what I was talking to this girl about, we were talking about it a little bit right now. So let's give some examples, right? So kabukicho, right? Kabukicho has a lot of, the prostitution. I guess it's not, prostitution is weird in Japan. Kind of like an escort, but the legality of it is very kind of a gray area, because first of all, it's happened in places like Shinjuku, kabukicho, whatever, where basically the police are just there to make sure nobody seriously gets hurt, so to speak, right? And even as far as I know, the legality of stuff like being an escort and stuff like that, it actually falls on the woman, because the woman is the one getting paid for something, and the woman is the one that is, seducing the man. But then if you try to prosecute the woman, it's kind of like, well, we know you did this because you had a good enough reason, so it's okay. You know what I mean? So it's weird, right? So it's a kind of, no one really gives a fuck, just making sure nobody gets too fucked over, right? But, there's also a lot of, to put it bluntly, and especially if you've ever been to Japan and just anime, look at this, people, middle school life, being young is idolized, all the lolicon stuff, whatever the fuck you want to call it. There's fucking porno. I said the first time I went to Japan, I saw a bookstore and there was fucking used lolly porn. Just when I went to the used bookstore, there's just a whole section of used lolly porn. And I'm like, do people really buy this? I mean, they must. It's there. But, you also see, and one of the times I was in Japan, I heard that one of the most famous escort girls is a middle school girl. And she has a Twitter where she, regularly talks about, oh, I sucked off this old guy, you know what I mean, blah, blah. And he gave me so much money, blah, blah, blah. And the whole kind of sex area there is interesting because it's kind of like this Ouroboros, right? I know I'm taking a long time, but I'm laying the foundation, the groundwork. There's this whole sort of Ouroboros. Like you could say that sometimes you could say there's this. I had seen this thing that a guy had said something like that. A lot of host boys are actually paid for by middle-aged men, because technically the middle-aged men, the old guys, whether they have a wife or not, might be, but they go have sex with all these girls, of various ages, right? And then a lot of times these younger girls, and if they buy them a gift, there's this specific shop where then they return the gift for money sometimes if they get like a gift or something, they don't want it. And then sometimes they actually give this money to help support the host boy. You know what I mean? So there's actually an Ouroboros sort of effect in some way. But, speaking about the casualness of sex, right? So many days ago, I was in Kabukicho, and there's this girl, she was hammered, right? And she's like, oh my God. And this is no joke, she was speaking English to me. She was speaking English to me with only a little bit of Japanese. It's like, oh my God, you are so cool. Your blue eyes, oh, you are so beautiful. Oh, I love your blue eyes. I was like, holy shit, she's a tiny little thing, right? Sorry, like I said, I think I got COVID for the 4th time. No joke, she's speaking English to me. And first of all, I was like, bro, first of all, your English, while that drunk and slobbering, is some of the best English I've ever heard in Japan. Like, she was saying a lot more to me in English too. And second of all, you're like this foot tall. How old are you? Now, I'm not going to say the age she told me, because I think the age she told me was complete bullshit. But I would not be surprised if she was in middle school. Let's just say this, right? Anyway, so while I was talking to her though, right, because I know a little bit of Japanese, right? And I could hear, randomly there'd be a guy coming up to me, or coming up to her, and I'd hear them whispering, and he'd be like, hey, right now there's a guy that wants to give you $250, right? Or, they said it in Japanese, right? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, not right now. I just want to have fun. I just want to have fun. And even some Japanese guys came up to me, and they're like, dude, she gives really good blowjobs. You should try. You should try. You should try. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I'm just telling you, dude, it's going to be really good, blah, blah, blah. And there's this other guy, and for sure it's true, because I've talked about before. I've had young girls fucking pick me up before, right? And there's this idea that, a lot of girls, again, of various and, suspicious age ranges, despite what they are telling you they are, they'll fuck, maybe the older guy because, dude, there's this one older guy that was like wanting to fuck her, dude, and this dude was fucked up looking, right? And I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so some guys will pay for money, but if they'll actually get like a cool guy, you know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, for free, of course, right? I mean, look at that one fucking girl that, I wouldn't, I still don't know what happened to that girl I've talked about before. Who knows how old that girl was? You know what I mean? She told me but man, she came back to my place, and man, she was crying when I asked if she was okay or not. The first time anyone's ever asked if I'm okay or not, and she started crying, But anyway, so we're all talking, and, and I've talked to the girl a few times since then. And, she was, oh, I got to go to the net cafe. Oh, I got to go to the net cafe. Oh, I got to go to the net cafe, blah, blah, blah. And so eventually I was like, the net cafe, when you're saying the net cafe, is that like, code word for, you got to do your itchy stuff, blah, blah, blah. And she like started laughing. She's like, oh, no. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, it's not my fault. It's the world's fault. You know what I mean? But she's like, I'm happy, so it's okay. You know what I mean? And so anyway, this was a very long foundation. So the girl that I was talking to up here, we were talking about it, right? And I'm like, isn't it crazy, like, how casual sex is? And, her English is very good, so we can have like a deep conversation, right? I'm like, and she's traveled as well, and she's talking about, she's been to China, that kind of stuff as well. And she's like, oh, well, it's not like this in China. She's like, Japan, yeah, it's like this. And she's like, but it's great. And she's like, and I'm like, so you think it's okay that these girls are like middle school, and they just fuck everybody? You know what I mean? And she's like, yeah, why not? And she's like, she's like, as long as you are happy and, you're doing it in a safe way, it's okay, I think, right? And I asked her, and I'm like, so did you ever do it, or have you thought of doing it? And she's like, oh, well, I just don't think that I was cute enough to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the fact that you're telling me that you don't think that you're cute enough to do it means that you were thinking about doing it. And she's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I think about a lot of things. So, yeah, of course I was thinking about doing it. But, I didn't think I was cute enough to be able to do it. And, the casualness of it, you know what I mean? So I'm like, so what do you think about the older guys that do it? And I'm like, what do you think if I'm like fucking these young girls, right? And she's like, well, are you happy? You know what I mean? She's like, if you are happy and you are doing it in a safe way, you know what I mean, then it's okay. And, there's this idea while we're talking, and while I've talked to other people, it's like, the weird thing about Shinjuku, and, I've made many videos about this, so this is like a peaceful area where this is actually, where I am now, this is actually a bit more of a city, but, I've been to even more suburban places, or more like quiet cities, right? Look at Inagi. Inagi was a very sort of safe city, right? very not safe isn't the word because Japan is very safe in general, but very mundane, casual, peaceful. You could say this is a little bit more hectic, I suppose, if you could even use that word. But there really is that vibe of Japan is you come back home, everything is peaceful. And then you go to the city, that's where you have fun. That's where you have your little bit of fun, right? And there's this idea of like, we go to Shinjuku to be happy. We come back home, we got to work, we got to do this, or, some people do work in Shinjuku, obviously, but we come back here, we're peaceful, maybe it's the family, whatever you're doing, excuse me, and then you go to Shinjuku, that's where we have fun for a little bit. The police are just there to make sure that nothing actually goes too crazy, to make sure nobody gets hurt. That's where you go to have fun, to be happy, right? Anyway, I just, I just think that's interesting. I'm glad her English is so good that we could have just such a conversation like that, because it's nice. I like having those kind of deep conversations. And a girl too, right? You just talk about this. And a lot of times, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm talking to Japanese dudes about it in broken English and broken Japanese, my broken Japanese. And, sometimes you'll talk to the hookers or, random girls I've talked to, but her English is way better than most Japanese girls that I've ever spoken to, honestly. Which is pretty rare because, like I said, it's very rare to meet someone who can speak any English, let alone as good as her. But, it just shows you how casual things are. And I do appreciate the non-maliciousness of Japan. Again, I think it's a double-edged sword because it feels like nobody actually cares about you. But maybe nobody cares about anybody in the world, But, I'm trying to think if I can think of anything else we were talking about. I was trying to tell her some stories, too, about how, because that girl, she thinks I'm very cool. She doesn't realize that I'm not cool. But I'm like, oh, no, I get turned down here, I'm telling her. She's like, what, you? She's like, no. She's like, if anyone is turning you down, they're just shy. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I mean, I think some girls just like, she's like, no, I don't believe you. But anyway, I don't know. Anyway, it's sex culture in different countries. I feel like most countries, though. I guess she was saying she's been to China, obviously. She's like, no, China's not like this. She's like, no. More boogers. Man, dude, I'm giving COVID to the fucking plants. Shit. If I have COVID again, I don't know. Maybe I just have a bad sinus infection or something. But yeah, I always just think that's weird because, America is such a holier than thou kind of place. And what the funny thing is, too? Actually, when I was talking to her, I was like, yeah, you know what? I feel like Japan is so non-malicious and, like, they don't have that holier than thou. And I was trying to explain to her what holier than thou meant. And it's like, it was actually, that's something, the idea of being holier than thou was, like, actually not even registering. So I wonder if there's an actual phrase for that in Japanese. Because actually, while we were speaking, I'm like, yeah, because she's asking me, we were talking about America. And I'm like, Americans are very holier than thou, I feel like. And that was actually some of her time. She's like, she didn't seem to understand what that even fathom what that means. So I wonder if there's an actual Japanese phrase for that, because she's like, I don't even get that. That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I don't know, man. Anyway, man, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate PayPal, Patreon. I'm here for a little bit longer. If you want to help me get another tiramisu, you can do that. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.